shaped my life.
Well, one answer to that is how doesn't it? The environment actually influences the expression of our potential, the expression of our genes, our DNA. And so the long wisdoms that we've had about there's potential in every child and we just need to nurture and welcome that is actually true at the neurodevelopmental and the biological level. And so the conditions that we create in early life really set the stage for all life success in learning, in education, in health, and in how we get along with one another and how kids give back when they grow up back to society.
We know that no period in life is more critical than the early years, particularly ages 0 to 7. And if we think about the teachings of our elders have always told us that, we change every 7 years. And so that 0 to 7 period is critical in all areas of development for young children.
You give kids things like literacy at an early age, literacy and numeracy at an early age. It impacts their learning through their whole school career.
We see that those children who do not have lots of stimulation, healthy relationships, enjoyment, fun, learning in those first years actually begin to show evidence in later years that they are deficient in many areas. You know that many of our communities are now choosing to utilize the early development instrument in kindergarten to show how the children are developing in these various areas. And we are finding that those children who do not have stimulation early in their lives are lacking and perform poorly on the early development instrument measures and show us that they aren't developing well socially, emotionally, physically, and cognitively as they should. Being exposed to language, being exposed to many words, being exposed to songs and poems and rhymes and chants, these things have a very direct impact on the child's ability to learn to read. So it not only affects the child in terms of language poverty, but it also affects the child in terms of the fact that they cannot actually learn to read as easily as the other children.
What are our values as society? So what matters most to us? So I think most people value children just in their own right as our treasures, as our future. But the other things that we value, equity and fairness, for example. The latest research shows that the inequalities that we see in society, the imbalances in fairness of access to opportunities, those also start very early. They start before children are born, partly in the conditions in which they're conceived and reared, and partly in the kinds of early learning opportunities that we afford them or not, after they're born all the way to when they start school. And so it's important to invest in this because of those values that we hold of, children are sacred to many communities and many peoples. We value fairness for an equal opportunity for all people right from the start. But then if we value other things like health and well-being or lifelong learning or most people value prosperity, economic success, a strong economy. It turns out all of those things also start, in the womb and in those early years because the foundations of human development are built there. All the capacities that we have as individuals and in our ability to relate to one another as a community, as a society, begin in those early experiences because of how the brain develops. So if we truly care about these things, about health and wealth and prosperity and getting along with one another and a just, fair, equitable society, you pay serious attention to those early years, especially for early learning.
It's so important to get the message out that children at this age have so much in terms of needing support. Our parents and our families, how do we reach those? How do we promote and provide more support to those families?
We are seeing far too many children who are not really realizing their potential. And it's not because the children are lacking in ability, it's simply because they don't have the same enriching opportunities in the early years of their lives. It's my belief that every child, given the opportunities to learn and to thrive, can become a productive citizen. And of course we know that we either pay now or we pay later. If we don't invest in the early years, and I have to tell you the investment is much lower if you do it in the early years than it is in trying to repair the problems later. It's much more expensive, and we all have to bear the consequences if we don't make sure that our children are doing well in their early years.
I think if you invest in an early age too, that's the best place to get the parents on board.
Yeah.
Because you get parental buy-in when you start investing at a really early age. And we know that that's a key factor in the student's long-term success, right? You want the parents or guardians or the family to buy into everything, into the whole education system. So if you're looking for an entry point to get the best return on your investment, whether that's return on a teacher's investment in effort, or a community's investment of dollars, or just focus of effort, then the early years have the biggest long-term impact. The kids deserve, when you've got such a gap in long-term outcomes like graduation rates, where we're talking 30% versus 86% in the mainstream, 30% in some communities, the best way to fix that is to start at the early ages and focus on early learning. That's when you'll see the long-term outcomes in graduation rates, in university retention rates, in employment rates in communities. You'll see it as a result of investing in the early years.
We have to continue to lobby and advocate for our children that early learning is the best foundation that each child can have.
What can we do to move early learning forward?
What can we do one-on-one in the lives that we intersect with? So what can you do as an individual? You can reach out and read to a child, a baby, play with them if you have those opportunities as a family member, as a fellow community member. You can support caring adults in the lives of young children. That's a tough job, the toughest job you'll ever love. Wherever you overlap, wherever your circles intersect with the lives of families, you can take this seriously. You can prioritize action and investment and attention to prenatal to school entry and to supporting the adults in the lives of children in that age, because they really are the make or break for their future. And so this is beyond early learning in many ways, and so we need to depend on one another. We can't rely solely on early childhood educators or kindergarten teachers or even parents, because no one alone can possibly bear the entire burden of shaping the conditions and the environments of children.
It's really important, as much as we can, to figure out ways that we can support our communities, our children, our parents, and our families, because we know that there's not enough support. We know that. We know that there's not enough resources. We know there's not enough funding.
We in our First Nations know what we need to do, but we also need guidance. We need directions from our leaders. We need direction from our elders. And we need everyone to come together to put that child first.
My hopes and dreams for children, all children, but in particular in First Nations, is that they will reach their full potential. All children deserve to have a life where their hopes and dreams are realized, whatever those hopes and dreams may be. And we need to work towards helping our children to achieve anything that they dream to do.
The closer connections children have with caring adults, the more confident they feel about the fact that people around them care for them, the more likely it is that they're going to develop into confident, productive individuals.
The short answer to these questions is there's something in it for everybody. There's something that you value as a Manitoban, as a Canadian, as a person in the world that has its roots back in those early years. As a society, we haven't paid enough attention to it. The last 50 years of research have shown what happens, what's possible, and what we can do. So it's really back to each of us to say, how important is this for us? And to actually take the future that we have before us in our hands, which are in those very small hands, as wise people have said, and take every effort, make every decision that we can, and every investment that we can to make sure that those early years are the best that they can be.